Get your hand off that lock. You do not touch federal infrastructure, Foster. Not anymore. Not you.
There's diesel on the water, Naomi Strand. Come look at the rack yourself instead of looking at me like I'm the problem.
I don't need to look at anything. I need you to understand that a man who got walked out of this plant 9 years ago does not get to come back and start making unilateral decisions about a system that isn't his to touch. Send me a sample. I'll have the lab confirm it in 40 minutes.
There is no 40 minutes. That sheen's already past the second marker. By the time your lab calls back, this whole intake's already through the carbon beds and into 3 towns worth of taps.
You are not a certified operator anymore, Mr. Lang. I can't authorize an unscheduled shutdown off a hunch from somebody who reads water meters for a living now.
Then don't authorize it. I'll own it.
You'll own it. That's rich, coming from the man who got fired for exactly this kind of thing, deciding you knew better than everyone else in the building.
Look how well that worked out for you the first time. The words landed exactly where she meant them to. Foster's jaw tightened, but his hands didn't stop moving. If I'm wrong, I'll take whatever you want to throw at me tomorrow. If I'm right, and I wait for your lab, I've got 3 towns drinking diesel by dinner because I was too polite to lose an argument. Move! He put his weight into the cutters. The lock snapped and fell into the weeds. You don't even work here! Naomi's voice cracked, more fear in it now than authority. You read meters, Foster. You do not have jurisdiction over that gate. And if this goes wrong, it's not just your name on it, it's mine too. He was already crouched at the wheel, testing the first inch of give in the housing. I've got a nose and 9 years of training that never expired, just because the badge did. Talk me out of it in the next 10 seconds, or get out of my way, because I am turning this wheel either way. She didn't move out of his way. She also didn't stop him, just stood there, arms crossed hard over her chest, watching with an expression that was equal parts contempt and terror, as if she couldn't decide which one to commit to. The valve wheel was stiff from disuse, built for 2 hands and a shoulder, not for a man working alone against failing daylight. Foster planted his boots, took the first quarter turn, felt the old grease crack loose inside the housing, and kept turning. If you're wrong about this, I can't protect your job, Naomi said, quieter now. I can't protect mine either. I'm not asking you to protect anything. He grunted through the last quarter turn. I'm asking you to write down the time. Whatever happens next, somebody needs an honest clock on it, and I trust you to keep 1 more than I trust anybody else standing here. The wheel gave one last hard quarter turn and locked. Somewhere under the concrete apron at his feet, the raw water flow into the treatment plant dropped to nothing. Foster stood there a second, breathing hard, watching the trash rack where the sheen had been thickening a moment before. Downstream of the closed gate, the channel that fed 3 towns worth of drinking water sat still. Behind them, deep under the yard, something let go with a heavy, muffled thunk that traveled up through the soles of their boots. Naomi's contempt vanished in an instant, replaced by something closer to dread. Foster, what was that? I don't know, he said, and for the first time that evening, he meant it completely. Write down the time. I'll walk the fence line and see what I can see. But the intake's shut. Whatever else happens tonight, that part's done. The Regional Water Authority served 3 towns off this one plant. Alder Falls, closest to the intake, and biggest of the 3. Piner Junction, 10 miles downline, mostly retirees and a lumber mill, and Colby Ridge, smallest, a scatter of farms and a single elementary school that drew its water from the same finished water main as everyone else. 40,000 people, give or take, none of whom had any reason that night to think about where their tap water came from, which was exactly how a well-run system was supposed to feel, invisible until it wasn't. By morning, the lab results came back exactly the way Foster had read them off a trash rack and a smell. Diesel concentration in the raw intake, high enough to have overwhelmed the plant's carbon dosing twice over. Not one household in Alder Falls, Piner Junction, or Colby Ridge had a drop of it in their tap water. The regional news ran a short, cheerful segment, a water meter reader's fast call, with a reporter standing at the edge of the intake channel asking Foster, on camera, how he'd known. You learn to trust your nose before your paperwork, Foster told her, keeping it short, keeping his eyes off the lens the way he always did. Paperwork catches up eventually. By then, it's too late to matter. Some people are already calling you a hero, Mr. Lang. Some people are being generous, he said. I just didn't want to explain to 3 towns why their water tasted like a gas station. For about 18 hours, Foster Lang was a mildly interesting local story instead of a defendant. Then, on the 3rd morning, 2 men in windbreakers with EPA embroidered small on the chest stood on his porch and told him he was the subject of a federal investigation into an unpermitted discharge to waters of the United States and unauthorized tampering with a public water system. I stopped the discharge, Foster said, still holding the door. I didn't cause one. There's a secondary relief valve on that system that vented raw intake water into a protected wetland about 6 minutes after your shutdown, the younger agent said, checking a printed report. That discharge is what triggered this. That valve isn't mine. I've never touched it in my life. The timeline says otherwise, Mr. Lang. Pressure event, then discharge. Then your name on the maintenance log as the last person to interact with that station. That's not evidence. That's a coincidence with my name attached to it. That's for the process to sort out, the older agent said, not unkindly, sliding a card into his hand. You'll want a lawyer. Foster stood in the doorway a long moment after the truck pulled out of his driveway, the card still in his hand, reading the small federal seal printed on it like it might rearrange itself into something less final if he looked hard enough. Josie heard about it from a friend at school before Foster got the chance to tell her himself, which was its own kind of failure, the kind he was going to have to get used to owning. She came home with her backpack still on, stood in the kitchen doorway, and asked the question in the flattest voice a 12-year-old could manage. Are they right? Which they? Foster asked, because by 3rd period, apparently, there were at least 2. The one saying you're a hero, or the one saying you're in trouble. Both for a while, probably, he said, because he'd promised himself a long time ago never to lie to her about the shape of things, even when he couldn't give her the whole shape. I need you to hear that from me before you hear it from somebody at school again. That doesn't sound like an answer. It's about the water thing, he said. Heroes and defendants aren't always different people, baby. Sometimes it's the same Tuesday. That doesn't make any sense. No, Foster agreed. It doesn't yet. Give me some time and I'll make it make sense. I promise you that. Are you going to jail? I don't know, he said, because he'd decided a long time ago that not knowing, said honestly, was better than a comforting lie she'd catch him in later. I know I did the right thing at that valve. I'm going to hold on to that part while the rest of it gets sorted. Coalfield Water Services issued a statement within 48 hours, the kind written by people who'd done this before, regret for any confusion, full cooperation with federal authorities, and one line that did all the actual work. The unauthorized actions of an individual without operational authority had caused the release in question. Dale Prentice, Coalfield's director of operations, gave one brief interview standing in front of the treatment plant's chain link gate, hands folded, voice even, using words like protocol and chain of custody the way other men used a shield. Coalfield takes water safety with the utmost seriousness, Prentice told the camera. What happened here was an individual acting entirely outside his authority, on equipment he had no business touching. We're grateful no residents were harmed, and we're cooperating fully with the EPA's review of the resulting discharge. Was there a leak detection alarm from the fuel depot prior to the incident? A reporter asked, off camera. I'm not going to get ahead of the ongoing investigation, Prentice said, and the interview ended there, clean as a closed valve. Foster watched the clip twice on his phone, sitting in his truck outside the county courthouse annex, waiting for a meeting he hadn't wanted to need. Dana Ellsworth's office was 2 rooms above a hardware store, a whiteboard covered in flowchart arrows nobody had erased in a while. She read through the EPA's preliminary filing without looking up for a long stretch, and when she finally did, her first question wasn't about the valve. Before you read water meters, what did you do? Foster didn't answer right away. Why does that matter? Because you closed a 200-pound gate valve alone in under 4 minutes on a hunch about diesel contamination that turned out to be dead accurate down to the compound. That's not a hunch. That's training. I need to know what kind. I was a licensed treatment operator a long time ago at that same plant. How long ago, and why aren't you anymore? 9 years, Foster said. I got let go. Budget reasons, officially. And unofficially, I asked too many questions about a nitrate reading nobody wanted to pay to fix. He looked at his hands. I don't know that the two things are connected. I've never let myself know. I'm gonna need you to let yourself know before this is over, Dana said, not unkindly. Juries and hearing panels don't like a witness who's still deciding what he believes. Dana wrote something down and didn't push further that day, but she circled the date twice. The EPA's timeline moved with a speed Dana said she didn't like the smell of. No independent technical review on the enforcement docket. None that anyone had told the defense about, no extension requested, a hearing date set inside 3 weeks, when comparable cases usually took months. Somebody wants this closed before anyone outside the agency gets a good look at it, she told Foster on the phone. I don't know who yet. I will. That night, the county's monthly emergency siren test went off at 6 o'clock, same as it always had. Same low-rising wail Foster had heard 1,000 times without flinching. This time it caught him standing at the kitchen sink with a glass of water he hadn't drunk yet, and it pulled him sideways into a version of himself 9 years younger, standing in a control room at that same plant, reading a nitrate reading twice because the first pass seemed too high to be right, writing the number down anyway, walking the report down the hall to a supervisor named Grissom, who read exactly 4 lines of it before saying the upgrade wasn't in this quarter's budget, and neither, probably, was next quarter's. He remembered the exact color of the readout that night, a soft amber against his supervisor's dim office, and the way Grissom hadn't even reached for his glasses before waving him off. Foster, I hear you, I do, but we didn't budget an upgrade this quarter, and I'm not going to be the one who tells the county we need one because a meter twitched. He remembered folding the report and carrying it back to his own desk instead of the file room, like keeping it closer might make someone care more. It hadn't. He set the glass down without drinking from it. Josie found him a minute later, still standing at the sink, and asked if he was okay in a voice that already suspected he wasn't. There was a time I was right about something like this before, Foster said. Nobody listened. I'm still finding out what that cost. Cost what? I don't know yet, he said, which was true and which he hated saying to her, because it meant she'd have to sit in the not knowing right alongside him. You're doing the thing again, Josie said, where your eyes are open, but you're somewhere else. Am I? Every time that siren goes off for the test, you go somewhere for a second. She studied him. Was it about the plant? From before? Something like that, he said. I'll tell you the rest of it soon. Not tonight. I need to get my own head around it first. Dana's investigator pulled the plant's SCADA telemetry under a preservation request the following week. Continuous sensor logs from the fuel depot's leak detection system, independent of anything Coalfield controlled directly. She spread the printouts across her desk like a hand of cards and turned the desk lamp toward Foster so he could see the timestamps himself. Walk me through what I'm looking at, she said. You know this system better than my analyst does. Foster traced a finger down the column. This spike here, that's a real leak signature, not noise. See how it holds instead of dropping back to baseline? A false alarm corrects itself in under a minute. This one didn't. It didn't correct itself because somebody corrected it for it. Dana tapped the next column over. 4 hours and 11 minutes after that spike, an operator terminal inside the plant's own control room acknowledged and cleared the alarm. No inspection ticket filed. No maintenance order opened. It just stopped existing as far as the system's concerned. That's not an oversight. You don't accidentally clear an alarm and then not open a work order behind it. That's what I think too, Dana said. I just needed to hear you say it out loud, in your own words, before I put your name anywhere near this document. Do you know who cleared it? Not yet, but the login credential that did it is a supervisor tier account. Only 2 people at that plant have that level of access, and Naomi Strand isn't one of them. Both of the ones who report directly to Dale Prentice. The data showed the alarm condition had flagged at the depot 4 hours and 11 minutes before Foster ever smelled diesel on the water. Nobody at Coalfield had escalated it. The alarm had simply been acknowledged and cleared from a terminal inside the plant's own control room, the same room Naomi worked out of. Somebody saw this coming and sat on it, Dana said, spreading the printout across her desk. That's not incompetence on a 4-hour delay. That's a decision. Naomi called Foster directly 2 nights later, off the record, her voice low like she didn't want her own kitchen to overhear her. I didn't clear that alarm, she said. I wasn't even on shift when it came in, but I was trained on a checklist that says wait for lab confirmation before any emergency shutdown, no exceptions, and I followed it word for word with you standing at that valve. I keep asking myself who wrote that checklist and why it's built to lose 4 hours every single time. You did what you were trained to do. I know. That's what scares me. A pause. I'm not ready to say any of this to anybody official yet. I need you to know I heard it, though. I'm not asking you to be ready tonight, Foster said. I'm asking you to keep your own notes from here on. Times, screens, who said what. Whatever you're not ready to say out loud yet, write it down somewhere nobody else can edit it after the fact. Why does that matter so much to you? Because I had a report like that once, Foster said. I let it sit in a drawer instead of somewhere nobody could touch it. Don't make my mistake twice for me. Naomi was quiet a moment. Okay, she said finally, I'll keep notes. Josie came home from school that same week with a science worksheet about the water cycle crumpled in the bottom of her backpack, unfinished. Mrs. Delgado asked if you were the meter reader from the news, she said, not quite meeting his eyes. I said yes. Then somebody asked if you were going to prison. What'd you tell them? I told them I didn't know because I don't. She finally looked at him. Is that allowed? To just say I don't know? That's the most honest thing anybody can say most days, Foster said. I'm proud of you for saying it instead of making something up to sound braver. I wanted to make something up, Josie admitted. It would have felt better for about 10 seconds. And then I'd have had to keep saying it, she said, working it out as she spoke. That sounds exhausting. It is, Foster said. I'd know. 2 weeks later, Dana asked her to keep more than notes. They met in Dana's office, Naomi perched on the edge of a chair like she might need to leave quickly, twisting her hands in her lap. I'm not asking you to accuse anyone, Dana said gently. I'm asking you to describe, under oath, exactly what you saw and exactly what you were trained to do. That's all. The facts do the rest of the work. If I testify against Coalfield, I don't have a job in this industry anymore. You understand that. Nobody hires the control room operator who turned on her employer. I understand it's a real cost, Dana said. I won't pretend it isn't. I can tell you that the operators who stay quiet in these situations don't usually end up better off 5 years down the line either. They just end up quiet about something that keeps happening. Naomi looked at Foster. You didn't stay quiet 9 years ago either, and look what it cost you. It cost me plenty, Foster agreed. But I've spent 9 years finding out what staying quiet cost me too. I just didn't send myself a bill for it until now. You get to choose which cost you'd rather carry. I can't make that choice easier. I can tell you which one I regret more. Naomi sat with that a long moment, then nodded once, like she was closing a valve of her own. Okay, she said, I'll testify. Dana's next find took longer and cut deeper. A records request into the county's own archive, the kind nobody thought to seal, because nobody thought anyone would ever go looking. A report, 9 years old, author F. Lang flagged elevated nitrate readings and recommended an accelerated filtration upgrade near the depot interconnect. Stamped received, never actioned, never destroyed either. Just filed the way inconvenient things get filed instead of dealt with. She laid it on the table between them without a word. Foster read his own handwriting for a long moment before he had to sit down. That's my signature, he said. I remember writing this at my kitchen table because I didn't trust the office printer not to lose it. It didn't lose it. It just got filed like a complaint instead of a warning. Stamped received, October the 9th. No follow-up action logged, ever. Dana slid a second page across. 6 weeks later, you're on a reduction in force list, one of 2 names on it. The other name transferred to a different plant. You didn't. I always told myself I didn't know for certain any of it meant anything, he said quietly. About Elise, her kidneys. I told myself 100 times there was no way to prove the water had anything to do with it, and not knowing was easier than the alternative, so I let myself not know. You don't have to decide today what this proves in a legal sense, Dana said, but I think you should stop calling it a guess, at least to yourself. There's a difference between not being able to prove something and refusing to believe it. That's a hard difference to sit with. Most true things are, she said. He didn't tell Josie that part yet. He told her the outline, the report, the old job, a company that hadn't listened, and left the rest of it folded up inside himself a while longer, the way he'd been doing for 9 years, except now he understood he was running out of room to keep folding it. A man introduced only as outside counsel for a joint working group met Foster at a diner off the county road and laid out an offer with the practiced ease of someone who delivered it before. A modest civil penalty, no federal criminal exposure, no public hearing. The SCADA data and the old report both staying exactly where they were, sealed under a settlement's confidentiality clause. This makes the whole thing go away for you and your daughter, the man said, pushing a folder toward Foster's side of the booth. Quietly, quickly. You go back to reading meters, you keep your house, nobody's name gets dragged through a federal docket. And the leak detection alarm that got cleared 4 hours early, that goes away too. That's not part of this conversation. Funny, Foster said. It's the one thing I actually drove out here to talk about. I understand this is emotional for you. It's not emotional, it's a question. Does the 4-hour gap disappear along with my case, or does somebody else find out about it the hard way, standing where I was standing? The man closed the folder without answering, which Foster understood well enough on its own. He didn't touch the folder on his way out, but he took it home anyway and read it twice at the kitchen table that night. The mortgage, Josie's orthodontist bill, the particular exhaustion of being the parent other parents whispered about at pickup, all of it lined up against a single page. He caught himself starting a third read, and a third read was how he knew. He wasn't looking for information anymore. He was looking for permission. Then he thought about a report filed and forgotten, and a woman who died 4 years slower than she should have because somebody decided a budget line mattered more than a nitrate reading, and he understood that if he took the quiet deal, the same alarm would clear itself in 4 hours again someday for someone else, and no one would ever know why. He called Dana instead. A sealed record is just a cleared alarm with a lawyer on it, he told her. No, Dana's research turned up one more thing before the hearing date arrived. She called Foster at 9 at night, her voice quicker than usual. I need you to sit down for this one. I'm sitting. Owen Dietz filed a personal financial disclosure 3 years ago. Standard stuff. Every federal inspector has to do it. Buried on page 4 under outside compensated activities. $2,000 for a technical review, paid by an entity called Coalfield Advisory Partners. That's not the same company that runs the plant. It's a subsidiary registered to the same address, same corporate officer. He never disclosed it as a conflict when he was assigned to lead enforcement on a case involving Coalfield's own plant. That's not a technicality, Foster. That's the reason this case got a 3-week hearing date instead of a 3-month one. He's not just moving fast because the case is simple, Foster said slowly, understanding arriving in real time. He's moving fast because he doesn't want anyone comparing his signature on my filing to his signature on that invoice. Exactly. And I'd rather not use it unless I have to. Accusing a federal inspector of bias is the kind of thing that can blow up in your face if the data doesn't stand on its own first. But it's there if we need it. You going to use it tomorrow? If the SCADA logs and your old report don't move the panel on their own, yes. I was hoping the facts alone would be enough. Tomorrow we find out if they are. The night before, Foster sat with Josie on the porch steps. No radio playing, no siren testing, just the ordinary quiet of a Tuesday. I need to tell you something before tomorrow, he said. 9 years ago, I found something wrong with the water at that plant. I wrote it up. Nobody fixed it. Not long after, I got let go, and not long after that, your mom got sick. Josie went very still. Is that why she got sick? I don't know for certain, Foster said. I might never know for certain, but I think it's true enough that I have to stop pretending it isn't, starting tomorrow. I wanted you to hear the shape of it from me before you hear pieces of it from a hearing room full of strangers. Okay, Josie said, in a voice much older than 12. She didn't cry, not then. She just leaned her head against his arm and stayed there a long time. The hearing room the next morning was smaller than Foster expected, fluorescent lit, a long table for the panel and a shorter one for each side. Owen Dietz opened for the agency's enforcement division in a clipped, procedural voice, laying out the discharge violation like a checklist. Unauthorized entry to a controlled facility, unpermitted release to a protected wetland, evidence of a pattern of boundary testing behavior by a former employee with a documented grievance against his old employer. Mr. Lang wasn't a stranger acting on a whim, Dietz told the panel. He was a disgruntled former operator with 9 years to nurse a grievance about a budget decision that, frankly, was above his pay grade at the time. That context matters. Dana rose without raising her voice. My client's so-called grievance prevented a diesel plume from reaching the finished water supply of 3 towns. I'd like the panel to hold that fact next to Inspector Dietz's characterization and ask which one the evidence actually supports. She opened with the SCADA timeline. Screen after screen of it. The leak detection alarm time-stamped, acknowledged, cleared. All 4 hours and 11 minutes of silence that followed laid out in a single unbroken line. This is not the story about a man acting on a hunch, she told the panel. This is a story about a company that knew, and an inspector who moved this hearing onto the calendar faster than any comparable case in this region's recent history. I intend to show the panel why. 40 minutes in, an aide slipped a note to Dana's assistant, who leaned in and whispered something that made Dana go still mid-sentence. I need the panel's indulgence for one moment, Dana said. I've just been informed of an active situation at the facility in question. I believe it bears directly on this hearing. Dale Prentice was the only person in the room who didn't ask which valve. The secondary relief valve at the plant. The one that had blown open the night Foster closed the main gate. The one Coalfield's maintenance logs showed as inspected, no action required, 8 months running, was showing pressure readings climbing again under a rain-swollen river, the same structural weakness straining under load a second time. Mr. Lang is a named respondent under federal charges related to unauthorized facility access, Dietz said when Dana explained what the alert meant. He cannot go anywhere near that site, hearing or no hearing. That restriction stands regardless of what's happening on the ground. Nobody is suggesting he go anywhere, Dana said. I'm asking this panel to recognize that a public safety emergency is unfolding in real time at the exact facility this hearing concerns, and that the most qualified person to prevent it is sitting in this room. That's not a legal argument, Ms. Ellsworth. It's a practical one, Inspector. You can debate jurisdiction after the water's still moving through that relief valve, or you can let a phone call happen right now and debate it afterward with 3 towns still safe. I'd like the panel to choose which version of today they want to explain later. I'm not asking to go near it, Foster said, standing. I'm asking for a phone. I will not leave this room. Every word I say, this whole panel hears at the same time she does. Naomi picked up on the second ring, her voice already tight. It's climbing, Foster. I don't have anyone qualified within 20 minutes of here. You're qualified? You've been standing in that control room for 2 years reading gauges I used to read for a living. I'm going to walk you through it exactly the way I do it myself. You're going to do the same thing I did that night, except this time, you're going to be the one whose hands are on the wheel. I've never done a live isolation under pressure, Foster. Only in training. Training's exactly what this is for. You know the layout better than I do at this point. You work there every day. I just used to. Breathe. Tell me your upstream number. I don't know if I can do this. You already are. You picked up the phone instead of calling someone else first. That's the hardest part done. The panel chair, after a long look at Dietz and an even longer look at the pressure chart Dana put in front of her, allowed it. Foster's phone went on speaker in the middle of a federal hearing room, and for the next 6 minutes, the only voice that mattered to anyone in that building belonged to a man reading numbers off a screen 3 counties away. 3. Confirm the isolation valve upstream first. Don't touch the relief valve itself. It's already compromised. Read me the upstream pressure. 61 and climbing. Read it again. 61, 62 now. Good. That's real, not a stuck gauge. Close the isolation valve slow, quarter turns. Watch the downstream gauge drop with you. If it doesn't drop, stop and tell me before you turn it again. Silence. The sound of a wheel turning somewhere far away, the whole hearing room holding still around a speakerphone. It's dropping. 40, 30. It's holding, Foster. It held. Read it twice before you believe it. I read it twice. It held. Foster set the phone down on the table, hands shaking slightly now that there was nothing left to steady. Thank you, he said, to Naomi, to the room, to no one in particular. It was the one exhibit Dana never could have planned for. A federal panel watching the defendant do, under their own direct supervision, the exact thing he stood accused of doing recklessly. The room exhaled as one body. Dietz, to his credit or his discomfort, said nothing for a long moment. Then the EPA's own Scientific Investigations Unit, a separate branch from enforcement, present that day only as observers. Badges different color from Dietz's, asked to be heard. We didn't come here to testify today, their lead investigator said, standing. We came to observe. What we just watched changes that. She opened a folder that had clearly been assembled well before that morning, thick with tabs. This office began an independent technical review of this facility 3 weeks ago, prior to and separate from the Enforcement Division's case against Mr. Lang. We were not aware, until Inspector Dietz's testimony this morning, that our review and his prosecution were proceeding on parallel tracks without coordination. I'd like the panel to understand why that gap existed. Go on, the chair said. Our review found 3 things. First, the fuel depot's leak detection alarm was acknowledged and cleared from an internal coalfield terminal 4 hours and 11 minutes before any public notification, with no corresponding maintenance action logged. Second, the secondary relief valve that discharged into the wetland has a documented structural defect, identified in Coalfield's own internal inspection report 18 months ago, and marked in writing, "Monitor, no action required." Third, she set a single page on the table, worn at the corners in a way that suggested it had been photocopied more than once. A nitrate exceedance report filed 9 years ago by a plant operator named F. Lang, recommending the exact category of upgrade that would have prevented tonight's second near failure. That report was never actioned. Based on independent telemetry and laboratory data, the investigator said, this office finds no basis to conclude Mr. Lang caused the discharge in question. The evidence indicates he prevented a substantially larger one, on 2 separate occasions, 9 years apart, using training and judgment this agency previously certified him to have, and then declined, on both occasions, to listen to. A panel member turned to Dietz. Inspector, were you aware of a financial relationship between yourself and a Coalfield subsidiary at the time you were assigned to lead enforcement on this matter? That review was compensated at a standard consulting rate and had no bearing on this case. Dietz's voice had lost its earlier clip. That wasn't the question, the panel chair said. Were you aware of the relationship, yes or no, when you accepted this assignment? Yes, and you didn't disclose it. I didn't believe it constituted a conflict. Dietz paused, and something in his face slipped for just a moment. The case looked clean. I wanted it to look clean. That determination isn't yours to make unilaterally, Inspector. It's this panel's, and it requires disclosure first. The chair made a note without looking up again. We'll be referring that question separately. Dietz's answer had taken too long to arrive, and when it came, it satisfied no one in the room, including, visibly, himself. Naomi's voice came back once more over the speaker before the call ended. I want the panel to hear this directly from me, she said, unprompted. Not secondhand. The wait for lab confirmation protocol I was trained under was written by Coalfield's own operations office, not by any state or federal standard. I followed it exactly the way I was told to. It's designed to lose 4 hours every time. I didn't understand that until this week. Foster called Josie from the hallway outside the hearing room, still holding the same phone Naomi had just spoken through. "It's over," he told her. "Not the paperwork part. That'll take a while. But the part where they thought I did something wrong, that part's over. Are you coming home tonight?" "I'm coming home tonight," he said. "And I'm bringing takeout because neither of us should have to cook after a day like today." By early afternoon, the charges against Foster Lang were withdrawn. The matter against Dale Prentice and Coalfield Water Services was referred for criminal investigation, falsification of maintenance records, concealment of a known safety defect. Owen Dietz was placed on administrative leave pending an internal ethics review of his undisclosed consulting relationship. Prentice, reached briefly by a reporter outside the hearing room, said only that Coalfield looked forward to cooperating fully, which was the same sentence he'd used the week before, and meant considerably less the second time. It took another 6 weeks for the county to formally strip Coalfield of its operating contract and award it, on an interim basis, to a public utility board answerable to elected commissioners instead of shareholders. Prentice was indicted 2 months after that on charges of falsifying safety records and obstructing a federal investigation. His lawyers filed for a plea agreement rather than risk a jury seeing the internal memo that read "Monitor, no action required" next to a structural defect that had now failed twice inside a single month. Dietz's administrative leave quietly became a resignation before the ethics review ever reached a formal finding, the kind of ending that satisfied no one but closed the file all the same. The new board's first public meeting ran late into the night, mostly residents asking pointed questions about maintenance logs. Nobody had ever thought to ask about before, and a few asking, more simply, whether the water was safe now. The interim director answered that one directly. Safe, monitored continuously, and, for the first time in longer than anyone could remember, actually being watched by people who didn't answer to a shareholder. Foster's operator certification, suspended the day the charges were filed, was reinstated without conditions. He was offered a supervisory operations role at the plant under the new management, an envelope with a start date in it that he set on the kitchen counter and looked at for a while before opening. When he finally opened it, Josie was standing in the doorway, watching him read it. "Are you going to take it?" "I think I am," Foster said. "Somebody's got to make sure the next report doesn't end up in a drawer. Can I see the plant sometime? The real one, not just the fence." "Once you're old enough for the hard hat to fit right," he said. "Deal." His old supervisor found him first, before Naomi ever called, not at the house, but at the plant, on Foster's first morning back, idling in an old sedan just outside the gate he used to walk through every day. Grissom was retired now, heavier, slower, and he didn't get out. Foster crossed the lot and leaned down to the rolled-down window instead, both men's faces framed in glass and gate fence chain link. "I read about the hearing," Grissom said. "The old report. I remember reading it. I remember exactly what I told you. I remember too. I've had 9 years to tell myself the budget really wasn't there that quarter. Maybe it wasn't. Doesn't change that I read 4 lines and decided the rest wasn't worth my time." He looked past Foster towards the plant, like he was looking for something he couldn't name. "I'm sorry about your wife. I don't guess sorry's worth much this many years out." "No," Foster said. "It isn't. But I'll take it anyway, because the alternative is you never saying it at all." He straightened up, keeping one hand on the window frame instead of leaning all the way in. Some doors you can open a crack without opening them all the way. "Read things twice from now on, Grissom, even the ones that seem too high to be right." "I will," Grissom said, and meant it in the particular way old men mean things they can no longer act on. He rolled the window up, put the sedan in reverse, and was gone before Foster reached the gate. The town's reaction, once the hearing made the regional paper, was a smaller version of the same split that always seemed to follow Foster. Some people stopped him at the hardware store to shake his hand a beat too long. Others still crossed the street out of an old habit of not knowing what to say to a man who'd been a suspect a month before. Josie reported that 2 girls who'd stopped sitting with her at lunch during the investigation sat back down the week the charges were dropped without apology, like nothing had happened. She told her father about it flatly, no anger in it, just an observation filed away for later. "Does that bother you?" Foster asked. "A little," Josie admitted. "Mostly, I just noticed it. I don't think I'm going to forget noticing it." "Good," Foster said. "Notice everything. Just don't let it turn you mean." Dana closed her file on the case with less ceremony than Foster expected. A phone call, a summary of what came next procedurally, and one piece of advice she gave him for free. "Most clients want to go back to exactly who they were before this happened," she said. "I don't think that's available to you, and I don't think you'd actually want it if it was. You know things now you can't unknow. Do something with that instead of trying to put it back in the drawer." "Is that a professional recommendation?" "It's a personal one," Dana said. "The professional one is, keep every document you touch from now on. In triplicate, forever. Old habits, new reasons." Naomi called once more, a few days after the hearing, mostly to say thank you for trusting her with a phone and a valve when he had no way of knowing she wouldn't freeze. "You didn't freeze," Foster told her. "You're the one who actually closed it. I just did the talking. You did the reading twice part. I just turned the wheel. That's the whole job, most days," he said. "Somebody reads it twice, somebody turns the wheel. It doesn't much matter which one you are, as long as both happen." "I put in for my operator's license last week," Naomi said. "The real one, not the trainee tier. Figured if I'm going to be the one turning the wheel, I should stop waiting for somebody to hand me permission to know what I already know." "Good," Foster said. "Read everything twice on the exam, especially the parts that feel obvious. Learned that from somewhere," she said, and he could hear the smile in it. On a quiet afternoon 2 weeks later, Foster drove Josie out to the low bank above the intake channel, the same stretch of water where all of it had started, and where, 9 years before that, a much younger version of him had written 4 sentences nobody read in time. They sat on the tailgate with their shoes off, the water moving slow and clean past the trash rack. Nothing wrong with it now that either of them could see or smell. "I want to finish what I started telling you the night before the hearing," Foster said. "About your mom." Josie didn't say anything, just turned to look at him, waiting. "I can't prove it in a courtroom. Nobody ever will, probably. That's not how kidneys work, and it's not how 9-year-old water samples work either. But I believe, as much as I believe anything, that the report I wrote and nobody read is connected to the years I lost with her, and to the years she lost with you. I've spent a long time telling myself I couldn't be sure, because being sure was heavier than I thought I could carry. I don't want to carry it alone anymore, and I don't want you finding out I was carrying it by accident, the way I found out things about my own father. So I'm telling you now, out loud, on purpose." "What was she like?" "You almost never talk about her either. Not really, just the sick part. She used to say the same thing about numbers that I say. I think I got it from her, actually, not the job." Foster smiled, small and real. She'd read a recipe measurement twice before she trusted it, read a bill twice before she paid it. She was the one who taught me that being careful wasn't the same as being scared. I forgot that distinction somewhere in the last 9 years. I think I've only just found it again. I wish I remembered more of her. I know. I used to think it was kinder not to talk about her much, so it wouldn't hurt as bad. I don't think that was kindness. I think it was me not wanting to hurt in front of you." He looked out at the water. "I'm done doing that too." Josie was quiet for a while, watching the water. "Were you scared to tell me?" "Still am, a little," Foster admitted. "Doesn't stop me from doing it anymore, though. That's new." "I'm glad you told me," she said. "I don't want you carrying stuff by yourself either. That's not," she searched for the word, "that's not fair to you. Or to me, I guess. I'd rather know the heavy thing than wonder about it." He laughed, short and real, surprised by his own daughter's math. No, I suppose it isn't fair. Fair either way. He nudged her shoulder with his. You're 12. When did you get smarter than me? Probably around the time you started talking to me like I was one of your gauges, Josie said. Read it twice. Tell the truth the second time. That obvious, huh? A little? They sat a while longer, until the light started going long and gold over the water, neither of them in any hurry to be the one who stood up first. On the walk back to the truck, Foster crouched by an old pressure gauge bolted to the fence post near the access road, decommissioned, kept there more out of habit than use, and showed Josie how to read it, tapping the glass twice the way he always did. Why do you tap it twice? She asked. Because the first number is what the gauge shows you, he said. The second number is what you're willing to believe. Best to make sure they're the same before you act on either one. Read it twice before you believe it, Josie said, trying the words out like she was testing whether they fit her too. That's the one, Foster said. And for the first time in longer than he wanted to admit, the number and the belief matched clean, all the way down.